There is this profoundly, just almost universally terrifying human experience that most of us either have faced or will eventually face.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you're sitting in a hospice room, right? Or a hospital room.
Yeah.
You're in one of those incredibly uncomfortable plastic chairs by the bedside of a dying parent.
Right, the ones that just ruin your back.
Exactly. And the machinery is just sort of humming in the background. The air has that distinct, sterile chemical smell to it.
You never forget that smell.
You really don't. And you look down at this person who was once the absolute bedrock of your reality, like the hands that held you when you were a child, the voice that guided your life.
Yeah.
And now they are just frail. They're withered, slipping away.
It's devastating.
It is. And in that specific agonizing moment, all those grand metaphysical stories we tell ourselves about the universe having a neat plan or cosmic justice or some beautiful overarching design, they often just evaporate.
They really do. They just shatter.
Yeah. You are left staring into the raw, unvarnished reality of human finitude.
Just bare existence.
Right. And that agonizing moment is exactly where the philosopher Simon Critchley found himself in 1994, watching his father die of lung cancer.
Yeah, that was the catalyst.
He took that profound, just world-shattering loss and tried to answer an impossible question: how do we live after the death of God?
Which is a huge question.
A massive question. So today we are doing a deep dive into his masterwork. It's called Very Little, Almost Nothing, Death, Philosophy, Literature.
It's quite a title.
It is. And we want to see if he actually found an answer or if, the academic critics who later tore his book apart were right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even start?
Well, I think it is a phenomenal starting point because it completely strips away the ivory tower,
Right, grounds it.
Exactly. I mean, we are dealing with Simon Critchley, who is undeniably a defining voice in contemporary continental philosophy.
He's a big deal.
He really is. He's taught at the New School for Social Research in New York, the University of Essex, and he's known for making complex philosophy accessible.
But this book is different, right?
It is. This specific text is deeply, painfully autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the preface to the second edition, which is the one we are really looking at today, Critchley explicitly positions the entire philosophical undertaking as an act of mourning.
For his father.
Right. For his father, William James Critchley. He actually describes the grueling process of nursing him.
Wow.
Yeah. And he mentions taking breaks and reading Samuel Beckett's novel Malone Dies.
Which seems like such a random thing to read while your dad is dying.
It might seem like a throwaway anecdote at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it actually becomes the philosophical anchor of his entire worldview later on.
That is so interesting. And the imagery he uses from that time is just devastating.
It really pulls no punches.
No, it doesn't. He talks about the visceral shock of seeing his father's corpse. He uses the words, I think it's tiny, withered, and ravaged by cancer.
Yep.
And he touches his father's cold forehead and thinks, so this is what death looks like. This is what my death will look like.
That realization of his own finitude.
Exactly. And I was thinking about this, like, if grief is a physical wound, most people immediately seek a bandage.
Right. Some kind of comfort.
Yeah. They look for a comforting narrative, something to make the pain make sense, like he's in a better place.
Yeah.
But Critchley seems to use the wound to write like a medical textbook on the pain itself.
That is a perfect way to put it.
He dives straight into the hopelessness. He builds this core premise that philosophy begins in disappointment.
And he specifically means two kinds of disappointment here: political and religious.
Okay.
But for the sake of our deep dive today, we are focusing really heavily on the religious aspect.
Right, because of the context of death.
Exactly. Critchley is confronting this painful realization that what he calls the existential balm of religion has just decisively broken down for modern people.
The existential balm.
Yeah, that comforting idea that the ultimate meaning of our lives is sitting out there somewhere outside of life, in a transcendent God or a heavenly afterlife.
It just doesn't work for him anymore.
No, it doesn't. Under modern conditions, Critchley argues, to do philosophy means you basically have to operate from a baseline of atheism.
Okay, wait, I have to pause you there.
Sure.
Because that is a massive, sweeping claim.
It is a big swing.
Yeah. He is taking a deeply personal moment of mourning and translating it into a universal rule, like doing philosophy means stopping having faith. Isn't that a huge leap?
It does feel like one, yeah.
I mean, just because his personal grief shattered his comfort, why does that mean all of human philosophy now mandates atheism?
Well, it feels like a leap. But he is situating himself firmly in a post-Kantian philosophical tradition.
Right.
In that tradition, the death of God isn't just like an edgy cultural slogan coined by Nietzsche.
Not just a bumper sticker.
Exactly. It is the foundational premise of modernity.
Wow.
Modernity essentially is the process of thinking through the death of God and dealing with the problem of our finitude.
Okay, I see.
So for Critchley, truly accepting finitude, like actually looking at the withered body of his father and realizing that this is the absolute end, means rejecting the bandage of transcendent meaning.
Because the bandage is a lie.
To him, yes. If you put a bandage on it, if you say he's in a better place now, you are looking away from the reality of death. You are evading the truth of the human condition.
So he's saying that looking for the silver lining is intellectually dishonest.
He is. And that sets up the central problem we have to grapple with today.
Which is?
If we cannot look to the heavens for meaning anymore, if that existential balm is totally gone and we are forced to look at the cold, hard reality of death, how do we respond to the resulting nihilism?
Oh, man. Which brings us to a massive concept that we really, really need to define.
We do.
Critchley calls this early exploration in the book Travels in Nihilon. Because before we can fix the problem of nihilism or even respond to it, we have to know what it actually is.
Exactly.
Because let's be honest, the word nihilism gets thrown around in popular culture all the time to just mean, like, wearing black, listening to sad music, and not caring about anything.
Right, like teenage angst.
Yeah, exactly. But Critchley provides a rigorous history of the concept, and it goes way further back than most people realize. He starts in 1799.
With a philosopher named Jacobi.
Yeah, Jacobi. And Jacobi is a fascinating starting point, but we need to explain why.
Well, Jacobi was critiquing a very specific philosophical movement called Fichtean idealism.
Okay, hold on. Fichtean idealism, we need to unpack that.
Sure.
For those of us who aren't steeped in 18th century German philosophy, what on earth is Fichtean idealism, and why was Jacobi so mad at it?
Fair question. Think of Johann Gottlieb Fichte as taking the idea of human consciousness to its absolute extreme.
Okay.
Fichte basically argued that everything in reality is ultimately posited by the ego, the human subject.
It all comes from inside our heads.
In a simplified way, yeah. Imagine a philosophical version of a brain in a vat, or solipsism, where the mind is the ultimate generator of reality.
Okay, I'm with you.
So Jacobi looked at this framework and was just horrified. He argued that this was an impoverished, really dangerous philosophical egoism.
Why dangerous?
Because if everything is just a product of the subject's mind, it leaves absolutely nothing outside the subject. There's no external truth, no God, no objective reality.
Just a mirror looking at a mirror.
Exactly. It's a terrifying void. And Jacobi was actually the first to popularize the term nihilism to describe this exact void, where the external world is reduced to nothing.
That is wild. So nihilism originally wasn't about being sad. It was a critique of a philosophy that made the human ego too powerful.
Precisely. That's the origin story.
That is a wild origin story. And from there, Critchley traces how the word evolved, right? He moves through the 19th century and touches on Russian nihilism.
Right, particularly looking at Ivan Turgenev's novel Fathers and Sons.
Oh, yeah. Turgenev's novel is crucial.
It is, because it popularized nihilism as a social and political attitude.
Through the character Bazarov.
Yes. You have Bazarov, who is this young radical medical student, and Bazarov completely rejects all traditional authorities.
Right, the church, the state.
Even the romanticism of the older generation.
Right.
He believes only in science and material reality. He is basically the prototype for the modern cynic.
Right.
Bazarov's nihilism is a destructive force. He wants to tear down the old societal structures because he sees them as fundamentally irrational and baseless.
You can absolutely see echoes of Bazarov in modern societal apathy today, though.
Oh, 100%.
That feeling of, the institutions are corrupt, the traditions are fake, so let's just burn it all down or just ignore it entirely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But Critchley says the history of this concept culminates inevitably with Friedrich Nietzsche.
Of course it does.
Right. Nietzsche takes this social attitude and elevates it to a profound metaphysical crisis. Nietzsche gives us the definitive formulation of nihilism.
And what's his definition?
He defines it as the process where the highest values devalue themselves.
The highest values devalue themselves.
That phrase is the key to everything in this section.
Right.
Nietzsche is arguing that nihilism isn't some outside force, like, a barbarian invasion attacking Christian morality or Western civilization.
It's not coming from the outside.
No. Nihilism is the logical internal consequence of those very values.
I really want to make sure we nail down the mechanics of this for the listener. How does a value destroy itself?
Okay, take the Christian metaphysical worldview. For centuries, it elevated truth with a capital T as the ultimate value.
Right, God's truth.
You must seek the truth, be honest, uncover the reality of God's creation. But eventually, that relentless, uncompromising will to truth turns its investigative gaze back onto its own origins.
Ah, I see.
It starts looking at the history of the Bible, the nature of the cosmos, the psychology of belief itself.
And what does it find?
It discovers that its foundation is a human fiction. The relentless pursuit of truth destroys the very concept of a divine, absolute truth. The scaffolding collapses under the weight of its own internal logic.
It's a devastating double bind. You are trapped in this vicious antagonism.
Exactly.
Like, your intellect won't let you respect what you know to be true because the material truth is bleak and meaningless, but your conscience also won't let you esteem the comforting lies you desperately want to tell yourself.
You're stuck.
The skyhooks that held up the meaning of life have completely rusted through. So the overarching question becomes, how do we respond to this collapse?
Right.
And Critchley outlines 4 common responses to nihilism that people try to use, and he rejects all of them.
Let's walk through those rejections because they are important.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first response is a pre-nihilist return to religion.
Just going back.
Yeah, this is basically burying your head in the sand, pretending the death of God didn't happen, and trying to force yourself to believe with the innocence of a medieval peasant.
Which he thinks is impossible.
Right. Critchley says, this is impossible for a modern person. You can't unring the bell of modernity.
Okay, makes sense. What's the second?
The second response is dismissive agnosticism.
Dismissive agnosticism.
This is the path most people take today, frankly. Just ignoring the metaphysical problem altogether, focusing on paying the mortgage, watching TV, and treating philosophy like a useless hobby.
Right, the who cares, I just need to get through Tuesday response.
Precisely. And Critchley rejects this because it's an evasion. It just leaves you hollow.
Okay, third response.
The third response is passive nihilistic resignation.
Ah.
This is the cynical shrug, recognizing that life is meaningless and just sinking into depression or detached irony, giving up.
Which doesn't help anyone.
Right. And the fourth response is what Nietzsche actually called active nihilism.
Active nihilism.
This is the violent revolutionary desire to destroy the meaningless world and create entirely new values by sheer force of will.
Oh, wow.
Historically, we saw this play out with horrific consequences in the totalitarian movements of the 20th century.
So we can't go backward to religion, we can't ignore the problem, we can't passively surrender to despair, and we definitely shouldn't violently try to overthrow reality.
We are running out of options really fast.
We really are. But Critchley proposes a 5th response.
He does.
And to build this, he pulls from 2 absolute heavyweights of continental philosophy.
Martin Heidegger and Theodor Adorno.
Right. He takes this concept from Heidegger called Verwindung. Now that translates roughly to a delineation or a getting over of metaphysics, rather than a heroic Promethean overcoming of it.
To add to that, he combines Heidegger's Verwindung with Adorno's idea of looking at things from an impossible messianic perspective.
An impossible messianic perspective.
Yeah, Adorno believed we must demand redemption for the suffering in the world, while knowing full well, with absolute certainty, that redemption is completely unattainable.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back on Critchley's 5th response because it sounds maddening.
It does sound like a paradox.
It does. He wants us to delineate nihilism rather than overcome it. Isn't that just a fancy academic way of giving up?
Oh, so.
Well, it sounds to me like mapping a maze instead of actually trying to escape it.
Right.
Like, if you are trapped in a burning building, you don't sit down and draw a detailed architectural diagram of the fire, you look for the exit.
Right.
Why shouldn't we want to overcome nihilism?
What's fascinating here is that impulse you have, the desire to find the exit, the desire to conquer the problem and escape the burning building, is exactly what Critchley argues is the ultimate trap.
Wait, how is surviving a trap?
Because the desire to overcome nihilism is itself a deeply nihilistic urge.
Really?
Think about the mechanics of what you're asking for.
Yeah.
You're saying that this reality, this finite, limited, flawed world we live in, is unacceptable.
Okay.
You are demanding that it be escaped or fixed by some grand, totalizing solution. You are seeking a new grand narrative to replace the old religious one.
Ah.
But relying on grand narratives is exactly what caused the crisis of nihilism in the first place.
Oh, wow.
If you try to invent a new one, you just imprison yourself all the more firmly in the very logic you are trying to leave behind. It's philosophical hubris.
So how does Verwinding actually work in practice? I need an analogy here.
Let's use a medical analogy instead of a burning building.
Okay.
Overcoming nihilism is like trying to cure a chronic, uncurable illness by denying it. Fighting it with fake miracle cures and demanding your body be perfect, you'll just exhaust yourself and live in denial.
Right.
Verwinding, on the other hand, is like getting a diagnosis for type 1 diabetes.
You can't cure it.
You don't conquer it. You don't defeat it. You map your life around it. You convalesce. You change your diet. You monitor your insulin. You learn to live with the limitation.
That makes so much sense.
The true response to nihilism isn't restoring a magical meaning. It's finding meaninglessness as an achievement of the ordinary.
An achievement.
It's learning to look at the world exactly as it is, without the arrogant demand that it justifies itself to us.
Finding meaninglessness as an achievement. That is a heavy, really counterintuitive idea.
It is.
And to understand how we actually achieve that, we have to look closely at how we experience the absolute limits of our existence.
Right.
Like, if we are stripping away all the comforting stories, what are we left with? And this transitions us beautifully into a deeper exploration of human consciousness and our relationship with death.
Yes, lecture 1 of the book.
Exactly. And Critchley leans heavily here on 2 profoundly difficult French thinkers, right? Maurice Blanchot and Emmanuel Levinas.
He does.
And he starts by describing the experience of reading Blanchot. He says Blanchot writes with this incredible, limpid clarity, a prose of pure daylight. But he uses that daylight to draw the reader into a terrifying experience of the night.
And we really have to be specific about what kind of night we are talking about here.
Right, it's not just regular sleep.
No. Blanchot distinguishes between the first night and the other night.
Okay, what's the first night?
The first night is the night of restful sleep. It's functional. It's the night where you recharge, where you master your fatigue so you can wake up and conquer the next day. The first night belongs to the world of possibility and human action.
So it's productive.
Exactly. But Blanchot wants to draw us into the other night, or what he sometimes calls the essential night.
The essential night is the night of insomnia.
Yes, it is the night of ghosts, of phantoms, of endless rumination. In the other night, you cannot find a comfortable position. Your body refuses to lie still. You are completely, inescapably riveted to your own existence, but you have no agency. You can't act. You can't escape into sleep.
I think everyone listening knows this exact feeling.
Oh, definitely.
It's 3:00 a.m. You desperately want to fall asleep because you have a huge meeting tomorrow, but your brain flat out refuses to shut down.
It just spins.
You are trapped in your own awareness. Every embarrassing thing you said a decade ago, every anxiety about the future, it all just circles endlessly. You want to escape consciousness, but consciousness is holding you hostage.
That is precisely the feeling Blanchot is capturing. And Critchley uses this concept of inescapable insomnia to draw a massive contrast with Martin Heidegger's view of death.
Okay, let's bring Heidegger back in.
For Heidegger, famously, human existence is characterized as being towards death.
Being towards death.
Heidegger argued that death is our ultimate, most fundamental possibility. By projecting ourselves toward our own inevitable death, we can grasp the totality of our existence and achieve authenticity.
So it's something we can use.
Right. We can look at death and say, I am going to die, therefore my life is mine to define right now. It implies a sort of active mastery. Death is a possibility that we can seize to make our lives meaningful.
But Blanchot and subsequently Levinas, they look at Heidegger and say, absolutely not.
They completely reject it.
For Blanchot, dying, and he uses the French term le mourir, meaning the active, ongoing process of dying, as opposed to la mort, the abstract, biological event of death.
Important distinction.
Dying is an impossibility. It is the one thing in the universe we absolutely cannot master. You can never experience your own death. You can never stand there and say, I am dead.
Because you aren't there anymore.
Exactly. Death is the exact point where the I can of human agency completely breaks down and fails.
It is the ultimate limit of our power.
Yeah.
And Levinas takes this breakdown of mastery even further with a terrifying concept he calls the LYA, which translates simply to there is.
This concept kept me up at night, ironically.
It's meant to. To understand the LYA, Levinas asks us to do a thought experiment.
Okay.
Imagine the entire universe is destroyed. Every object, every person, every star, light, dark, everything is completely annihilated.
Total void.
Levinas says that even in that absolute void-like nothingness, there remains sort of atmospheric density. There remains the sheer facticity of being itself.
Like a presence.
An impersonal, anonymous, horrifying murmur of existence. It's like the static on a television screen when the channel is dead but the TV is still on. That murmur is the LYA.
It is the wrestling of being in the dark. Levinas is saying that the ultimate nightmare of human existence isn't that we die and disappear into a peaceful nothingness. The nightmare is that existence never stops.
It just keeps going.
The ill lie persists. It is an interminable, exitless reality.
It's suffocating.
It is. And to really hammer home this horrifying lack of mastery we have over death, Critchley brings in this incredibly striking, brutal analogy from Blanchot about suicide.
This part is intense.
It is.
Yeah.
We typically think of suicide in our culture as the ultimate act of taking control. It's the ultimate I can, a person deciding to master their own fate.
But Blanchot completely shatters that view. He argues that suicide is a profound, tragic self-deception.
How so?
When a person kicks away the stool to hang themselves, they believe they are making a triumphant active leap into the void. They think they are escaping existence.
Right?
But Blanchot says they don't feel the leap into the void. All they feel is the rope. They feel the rope tightening around their neck, binding them ever more tightly, more intimately, and more agonizingly than ever before to the very physical existence they are desperately trying to leave.
I want to let that sit for a second because it completely changes how we view our desire to escape.
It does.
You try to escape being, and you only end up more fiercely riveted to the physical agony of it. You can never jump out of your own skin.
Never.
So Critchley takes Levinas's concept of the il-fi-a, this insomniac, inescapable murmur of existence, and he makes a highly controversial move with it.
He really alters Levinas here.
He does, because Levinas originally framed the il-fi as something horrifying that we must escape. And Levinas argued that we escape it through the ethical encounter with another human being. When I look at the face of the other, it pulls me out of the anonymous murmur and points me toward ethics, which for Levinas ultimately points toward the divine, toward God.
There's an escape hatch.
But Critchley takes a scalpel to this. He strips Levinas of God and he strips him of ethics. He wants to focus purely on the neutral, terrifying reality of the il-y-a. Why amputate the hopeful part of Levinas's philosophy?
Because Critchley is relentlessly, almost stubbornly committed to his post-theological starting point.
The baseline atheist.
Exactly. He looks at Levinas's escape hatch and asks, why must radical otherness equate to goodness or ethics or the divine? Why couldn't it just be a neutral blank wall? By stripping away that theological safety net, Critchley creates a concept he calls atheist transcendence.
Atheist transcendence. That sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but it makes sense in his framework. It's a transcendence, but not upwards toward a heavenly God who will save us.
Where is it going then?
It is a transcendence outwards into the primal scene of emptiness, into the ringing void at the heart of existence. It's an incredibly demanding, unsettling vision. He is asking a brutal question. Having stripped away God, having reduced existence to this bare, insomniac murmur from which we cannot escape, how does humanity cope? How do we live in the face of this absolute limitation without going mad?
And naturally, when human beings are faced with an inescapable, terrifying void, our instinct is to build an escape hatch anyway.
We always try.
If philosophy and religion can't save us, we usually turn to art. Which brings us to the next phase of Critchley's argument, where he explores how history tried to solve this exact problem.
Moving into lecture 2.
Right. He looks specifically at Generomanticism, which was a literary and philosophical movement in late 18th century Germany, spearheaded by thinkers like Friedrich Schlegel.
Right.
Let's set the historical stage here. The Enlightenment had happened. We had the scientific revolution, the rise of rationality, the categorization of nature. But this hyper-rationality left people feeling fractured. It left a cultural wound.
Right. And to understand why they felt fractured, we have to look at Immanuel Kant.
Okay, the giant shatterer hanging over this era.
Yes. Kant had written his critiques, and essentially, he mapped out a massive gap in human experience.
What kind of gap?
Well, on one side, you have the world of nature and science, things we can know objectively, governed by rigid laws of cause and effect.
Okay, physics, math, all that.
Right. On the other side, you have the realm of human freedom, morality, and ethics. And Kant struggled to show how these two worlds connect. Like, how can we be free, moral agents in a universe governed by mechanical laws?
The Generomantics looked at this massive gap Kant identified, and they looked specifically at his third critique, which deals with aesthetics, beauty, and art.
Right, they saw an opening.
And they saw a lifeline. They believed that art, the aesthetic experience, could be the bridge to heal the wounds of modern rationality. They thought, if science divides us and religion is failing, maybe poetry can save us.
It was a very hopeful time.
They believed they could unify philosophy and poetry to create a new mythology, a massive, beautiful project that would make the modern world whole again.
It was an era of what you could call aesthetic absolutism. The belief that art becomes the ultimate medium for overcoming the contradictions of the modern world. If we just write the perfect poem or compose the perfect symphony, we can touch the absolute.
But Critchley, analyzing the history, is brutally clear. This project failed.
It crashed and burned.
It really did. And it was heavily critiqued by later philosophers for failing. Hegel, for instance, launched a devastating attack on the Romantics.
Right.
He argued that their obsession with romantic irony, this constant, detached, artistic winking at the audience, resulted in an abstract, empty freedom that was completely divorced from real, ethical community life.
And the political critique is even sharper. Critchley brings in the political theorist Carl Schmitt.
Oh, yeah.
Schmitt critiqued political romanticism as a subjectified occasionalism.
Okay, stop right there. Subjectified occasionalism. I promised the listeners we wouldn't drown them in jargon. Yeah. What does that actually look like in the real world?
Okay, let's translate it. Think of a politician who treats governance like curating an aesthetic Pinterest board. They are so obsessed with the endless possibilities, the beautiful rhetoric, the feeling of a revolution, that they refuse to actually make a hard, concrete decision.
Because making a decision ruins the vibe.
Exactly. Because making a decision means closing off other possibilities. They treat every political event merely as an occasion for their own subjective, poetic reflection. They were all vibes, no action.
That sounds remarkably contemporary.
It really does. Historically, this meant that Romanticism, which started with such high ideals, often ended up devolving into passive political reaction, sudden regressions into religious fundamentalism, or just tragic, self-destructive personal lives.
Okay, so if the Romantic project to save the world with art was a naive, catastrophic failure, why on earth is Critchley spending so much time analyzing it? He isn't bringing it up just to dunk on Schlegel.
No, not at all. He's doing something brilliant here. He flips the script.
How?
He argues that the failure of Romanticism, what he calls its unworking, is actually its greatest strength.
Well, wait, failing is its strength?
Yes. The Romantics tried to produce grand, closed philosophical systems to explain everything, but they couldn't. Instead, their signature literary form became the fragment.
The fragment. This is crucial.
Think about the nature of a fragment. By definition, it is a piece of something. It is complete in its immediate self, but it visibly, obviously, points to a larger whole that is missing.
Like a broken statue.
Exactly. The fragment physically embodies limitation. It constantly oscillates between the desire to synthesize everything into a neat, beautiful package and the ironic admission that it can't actually do it. The fragment is honest. It admits that it can't give you the whole truth.
So the non-romantic essence of Romanticism, as Critchley calls it, is actually a profound self-consciousness of human limitation.
Right.
It refuses the totalizing ambitions of grand philosophical systems, and Critchley draws a fascinating direct line from this 18th century fragmented Romanticism all the way to a modern 20th century American philosopher named Stanley Cavell.
Cavell is the perfect bridge to modern life here.
Yeah.
Cavell advocates for a turn to what he calls the eventual everyday. He recognizes that we can't touch the absolute, so we must return to the ordinary.
But not just settling for the ordinary.
Right, exactly. It's vital to understand that for Cavell, turning to the everyday isn't just settling. It isn't just accepting the mundane, boring status quo. It is a quest. It is about transfiguring our relationship to ordinary life through language and imagination.
Cavell calls it tragic wisdom.
Yes, tragic wisdom. It is the deep, lived acknowledgement of our finitude. It's accepting that we are separated from each other, that we will die, and finding a way to inhabit our ordinary daily reality meaningfully, without demanding that the universe offer a salvation or a grand explanation.
I see where you're going with this, but I want to push back because I can hear the cynics in the audience right now.
Oh, sure.
I look at this embrace of the fragment, the celebration of the ordinary and the everyday, and part of me wonders, is this just a massive intellectual coping mechanism?
What do you mean?
Like, is Critchley just saying, well, since humanity isn't smart enough or capable enough to build grand, totalizing philosophical systems that explain the universe anymore, let's just pretend that writing incomplete fragments about ordinary life was the goal all along. Is he just making a virtue out of a necessity?
He's absolutely making a virtue out of a necessity. But he would argue that is exactly the point of maturity.
Really?
Yes, we cannot build grand philosophical systems anymore because the foundations for those systems, transcendent truth, divine guarantees, have crumbled under the weight of modern scrutiny.
The nihilism we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The fragment isn't a failure of ambition. It's a sobering acknowledgement of reality. It is honesty in the face of nihilism.
Okay, so the romantic fragment points us toward the everyday, but it still kind of longs for the absolute. If romanticism fails to provide a fully realized, hardened response to nihilism, what literature does succeed in facing the void head-on without flinching?
This is where we get to the core of the book.
Right. To find that, Critchley argues, we have to move to the true hero of this entire philosophical journey. And that brings us to the works of Samuel Beckett.
Yes, Lecture 3.
This is widely considered the absolute beating heart of the book. Critchley argues that Beckett's novels, specifically works like Malloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnamable, are the ultimate, most adequate response to nihilism that we possess.
Now, when philosophers look at Beckett, they tend to get very excited. His work is dense. It deals with isolation, the breakdown of language, and the absurdity of existence. Philosophers want to claim him.
They want to interpret him.
Right. Critchley uses a wonderful image from the philosopher Jacques Derrida to describe how academics usually treat Beckett. He calls it the dredging machine.
The dredging machine.
Philosophers bring this heavy, clunky, analytical machinery to Beckett's text, trying to dredge up a coherent philosophical thesis, a hidden meaning, a grand message about the human condition.
But the dredging machine never works on Beckett.
Never. The text, like silt in water, just slips right through the metal teeth of the machine. Beckett's texts actively, aggressively resist being colonized by philosophical meta-language. You can't pin him down.
So if you can't extract a positive meaning from Beckett, how do you read him? Critchley turns to Theodor Adorno's interpretation, right?
He does.
Adorno recognized that the dredging machine doesn't work. He viewed Beckett's work as a determinate negation of meaning.
Which is a dense term.
Right. Essentially, it means that Beckett isn't just randomly spouting nonsense. He is systematically and purposefully destroying meaning as it arises.
Right. And context is key here. Adorno was writing in the aftermath of the Holocaust. He looked at a world that had produced Auschwitz, and he believed that any art that tried to be beautiful or meaningful or uplifting in the face of that horror was functionally obscene.
Exactly. For Adorno, Beckett's bleak, stripped-down plays where characters are trapped in ash cans or buried up to their necks in sand, that was the only appropriate aesthetic response to a totally administered, horrific society.
Adorno saw Beckett's organized meaninglessness as a mirror reflecting a world where all meaning had been irreparably destroyed.
It's a powerful reading, but Critchley says Adorno, as brilliant as he was, missed something absolutely crucial about Beckett's work.
You missed a huge piece of the puzzle.
Adorno thinks Beckett's work is entirely bleak. He calls it a sort of tearless, dried-up weeping. But Critchley argues that Adorno entirely misses Beckett's humor.
Yes.
And anyone who has actually sat down and read Beckett knows he can be incredibly laugh-out-loud funny. But it's a very specific, weird kind of funny. It's a sardonic, grotesque, heavily physical humor.
It is deeply tied to bodily decay. It's characters struggling to ride bicycles with stiff legs, characters transferring sucking stones from one pocket to another in a maddeningly precise mathematical order, characters farting, falling over to the mud, and being unable to get up.
It's physical comedy in the void.
Critchley calls this the syntax of weakness.
Syntax of weakness. Let's unpack that.
It means Beckett's language itself is structured as a series of antithetical inabilities.
What does that mean in a sentence?
A sentence will posit something, an idea or an action, and the very next clause will immediately comically undo it. It's a language that is constantly demonstrating its own inability to go on, yet it is absolutely unable not to go on.
Like the end of The Unnamable.
Exactly. Think of the famous iconic ending, I can't go on, I'll go on. This comic energy, this relentless focus on the degenerating physical body and its awkwardness, acts as what Critchley calls a node of uncolonizable resistance.
Uncolonizable resistance.
It prevents the text from being swallowed up by a grand, purely bleak ideological interpretation like Adorno's. It keeps it grounded in the dirt.
To bring this into the 21st century for our listeners, I can't help but compare Beckett's syntax of weakness to modern absurdist internet culture.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Right. You look at the memes and the humor of younger generations today, and it is often incredibly bleak. It is deeply self-deprecating, hyper-focused on physical exhaustion, mental breakdown, or the sheer comedic absurdity of trying to function in a chaotic, crumbling world.
Yeah, this is fine dog in the burning room.
Exactly. But that humor isn't a sign of giving up. It isn't passive nihilism. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way to find comfort and solidarity in the shared experience of things falling apart. It's resistance through laughter.
That is a phenomenal parallel.
Mm.
It is laughter that acknowledges the void, but refuses to be silenced by it.
But I want to push you on the philosophical implication here because it's tricky. Is Critchley arguing that Beckett's books literally mean nothing? That if we dig to the bottom, there is zero meaning, just a void with a whoopee cushion on top?
No, he is not saying they mean nothing in a vacuum. He is saying that Beckett is demonstrating how meaninglessness is an achievement.
There's that phrase again. Explain how arriving at meaninglessness is an achievement.
Think about it. It takes immense artistic rigor and psychological bravery to strip away all the fake narratives, all the comforting stories we tell ourselves to feel safe.
Because we naturally want them.
We are so desperate to be saved, to find a narrative arc that redeems our suffering and makes our pain worth it, that we constantly invent illusions. Beckett systematically decreates those illusions. He strips away our narrative identity. He strips away our grandeur, revealing the unrepresentability and the awkward physical reality of our own dying.
And what's left?
By doing this, he achieves what Critchley beautifully calls a redemption from redemption.
Redemption from redemption. That is profound.
By redeeming us from the false, exhausting hope of a magical salvation, he returns us to the raw, physical, undeniable reality of the ordinary. The mud, the failing body, the immediate environment. It is an achievement to finally accept the world exactly as it is, without constantly demanding it be something more.
It's a powerful idea, finding peace in the mud. But it raises a lingering doubt, I think.
Yeah.
Can art ever truly satisfy that deep human hunger for meaning, even if it's pointing us back to the ordinary? It seems like Critchley himself wrestled with this, which is why we have an entirely new chapter added to the second edition of the book.
Lecture 4.
Right. He turns away from the bleak mud of Beckett and looks at the American poet Wallace Stevens, focusing specifically on an incredible reading of Stevens's poem, The Idea of Order at Key West.
The addition of Stevens is a really beautiful, necessary coda to the book. It softens the blow of Beckett a little bit.
How so?
In the poem, there is a singer walking along the beach at Key West, singing beside the sea. Critchley uses this poem to explore the fundamental dialectic between reality and imagination.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Reality is represented by the sea. It is chaotic, meaningless, dark, or raw, unformed existence. It is the ill-ya.
The terrifying murmur.
Exactly. The imagination is represented by the singer. The sea isn't just a pretty backdrop. It is terrifyingly meaningless. But the singer, through her song, imposes an idea of order upon that reality. The human mind uses imagination to organize the meaningless chaos into something habitable, something we can actually live inside.
But importantly, Stevens isn't saying the imagination replaces reality.
No, not at all.
The singer doesn't ignore the sea. The poetry has to adhere to reality. It organizes it, it transfigures it, but it never loses touch with its material base. It doesn't pretend the sea isn't there.
Right.
And this brings up a massive concept in Stevens's work that Critchley zeroes in on: the supreme fiction.
Yes, the supreme fiction. In a world without God, a world steeped in nihilism, human beings still possess this blessed rage for order.
We just can't help it.
We can't. We need structure. So we create fictions, art, poetry, narratives, societal structures that give order to our lives. But the key to the supreme fiction is that we believe in it, knowing full well that it is a fiction.
We know it's fake.
It isn't a delusion. We know we made it up, but we choose to inhabit it anyway. It provides a minimal transfiguration of reality.
Okay, I have to challenge this. This is where I struggle with Stevens and Critchley.
Bring it on.
If we know it's a fiction, how can it actually comfort us when things get dark? Like, if I go to a magic show and I know exactly how the magician is hiding the rabbit in his sleeve, I can appreciate his sleight of hand. I can respect the craft. But I'm not going to be amazed by the magic.
You can't suspend your disbelief.
Exactly. If I know the mechanics of the trick, if I know my life's meaning is just a supreme fiction I invented to stop myself from going crazy, how does that hold up when tragedy actually hits? When you are sitting in that hospice chair?
It's the hardest question of the book, honestly.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Critchley's answer is that demanding to be amazed by real magic is essentially a childish demand for the old religious existential balm.
It's wanting them stitched back.
Yes, it's the demand for a transcendent truth that simply doesn't exist anymore. Critchley is arguing that true adult philosophical maturity means accepting the illusion as an illusion and deciding to find value in the order it brings to the chaos anyway.
It's choosing the fiction because the alternative is the void.
Exactly. It's accepting the almost nothing without falling into despair. It's understanding that a minimal transfiguration, the beauty of a poem, the shared laughter over a dark joke, the temporary fragile order we bring to our daily lives, is literally all there is.
And deciding it has to be enough.
And deciding bravely that it has to be enough.
It is a stark, incredibly demanding worldview. It asks a lot of the reader. And that brings us to the final crucial section of our deep dive, the critical reception.
Oh, this is fascinating.
We've unpacked the theory, we've walked through the journey, but did this book actually work for its readers? Did Critchley achieve his massive intellectual ambitions with very little? Almost nothing. Because when you look at the academic reviews from his peers, the response is wildly aggressively polarized.
It really is. I mean, you have reviewers who think it's a masterpiece and reviewers who think it's an absolute disaster.
Let's start with the positive.
On the sympathetic side, you have critics like Robert Birch writing in the review of Metaphysics. Birch is a very careful reader, and he completely grasps what Critchley is attempting.
He sees the vision.
He sees a clear, necessary philosophical trajectory in the book, addressing the radical ungraspability of finitude. Birch understands that Critchley is trying to prove there is no meaningful, transcendent fulfillment for finite beings, and he respects the book as a serious, major contribution to contemporary philosophy.
He buys into the meaninglessness as an achievement.
He gets that it is a bitter pill, but he respects how Critchley manufactures it.
And then on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, you have Lance St. John Butler writing in the Modern Language Review, and Butler is scathing.
He doesn't hold back at all.
No. He calls the book virtually unreadable. He accuses Critchley of meandering, of pursuing random academic leads into nowhere, and says the book entirely lacks a coherent thesis, but Butler's most biting, damaging criticism is a charge of intellectual bad faith.
Yes, the bad faith argument is fascinating.
Explain it for us.
Butler points out a massive contradiction. He notes that Critchley spends an enormous amount of time mocking other philosophers for bringing their dredging machines to Beckett, right?
Right, making fun of them for interpreting it.
Critchley laughs at them for trying to extract philosophical meanings from a text that refuses meaning. And then, Butler points out, Critchley turns around and proceeds to do the exact same thing.
Oh, man.
He uses heavy hitters like Adorno, Derrida, and Cavell to offer his own highly complex, academic, philosophical interpretation of Beckett.
It's a sharp critique. You can't interpret Beckett, but here's my 50-page interpretation of Beckett.
Exactly. Butler also nitpicks scholarly errors, pointing out that Critchley actually misspells the title of Beckett's novel, The Unnameable, in the text.
Ouch.
But setting the academic pedantry aside, the charge of bad faith is a serious blow. Is Critchley just doing what he critiques others for doing?
What's the defense against that?
Critchley's implicit defense within the text is that his interpretation is fundamentally different because he isn't extracting a positive meaning from Beckett. He's extracting the philosophical significance of Beckett's refusal of meaning.
That's a subtle distinction.
It's a deeply nuanced distinction, but a crucial one for his project. And bridging the gap between these two extremes, you have reviewers like Dita Shutter, who offer a much more balanced view, appreciating the book's ambitious quest to find this deep kinship between philosophy and literature, even if the execution is sometimes labyrinthine.
But looking at Butler's furious, table-pounding review, there is a massive, glaring irony here that I don't think Butler even realized.
What's that?
Think about it. Critchley writes an entire dense book arguing that the human desire for a neat, totalizing, overarching meaning is a nihilistic trap.
Right.
He writes a book celebrating the fragment, celebrating incompletion, limitation, and the refusal and easy answers. And then a critic gets absolutely furious at the book because it doesn't provide a neat, totalizing, overarching meaning. It's like criticizing a book about the beauty of silence for not being loud enough.
That is a brilliant observation. The irony is completely palpable. Butler fell into the exact trap Critchley was describing.
He did.
But to be fair to Butler, and to any frustrated reader who picks up this book, we really have to validate their experience. The book is incredibly dense.
Oh, absolutely.
It does meander through highly complex, esoteric readings of difficult thinkers.
Yep.
And Critchley's move To secularize Levinas, to violently strip away God and ethics from the Ilwaye, is highly controversial and arguably does violence to Levinas's own deeply felt project. The structure of the book isn't a traditional linear point A to point B argument. It is a labyrinth.
It's a labyrinth, but despite the twists and turns, the core thesis absolutely remains clear by the end. We must learn to live with very little, almost nothing.
Precisely. The book demands that we find what Critchley calls atheist transcendence, not by looking up at the sky, but by staring into the ringing void at the heart of existence.
Embracing the void.
It asks us to stop demanding salvation, to throw away the existential bomb and start looking at the world, right here, right now, in all its fragile, decaying, ordinary, beautiful reality.
So, to summarize the immense, winding journey we've been on today, we started with the raw, deeply human image of a son standing in a hospice room, looking down at his father's withered body, experiencing the absolute collapse of metaphysical comfort.
The beginning of disappointment.
Right. From that personal wound of grief, we trace the grand history of nihilism, the realization that our highest values have collapsed under their own weight. We ventured into the terrifying, insomniac other night of Blanchot and the inescapable rustling static of the Ilwaye.
The murmur of being.
We explored how the Romantics tried to heal the modern world with art and how the failure of that project, the incomplete fragment, actually teaches us to bravely accept our limitations.
The necessity of failure.
We waded through the mud with Samuel Beckett, discovering that his sardonic bodily humor and his relentless decreation of meaning is actually a profound way to achieve the reality of the ordinary.
The syntax of weakness.
And finally, we walked on the beach with Wallace Stevens, learning that even if the order we bring to the world is a fiction, a minimal transfiguration, it is still an order we can choose to inhabit.
The supreme fiction.
Critchley shows us that giving up on grand, cosmic meaning isn't a defeat. It is, perhaps, the only way to truly appreciate the fragile, ordinary world right in front of us.
It is a remarkable journey. And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds on Critchley's text, but asks a question a little beyond it.
Oh, I like this. What is it?
Throughout this entire journey, we've been dealing with literature and philosophy. We've been dealing with words, the fragments of the Romantics, the syntax of weakness in Beckett, the supreme fiction of Stevens.
Right, it's all text.
But Critchley's own premise, established right from the beginning, is that words eventually fail to capture the true, ungraspable nature of our dying. The Ilwaye is a murmur, not a language.
Words always fall short of the void.
They do. So if words ultimately fail us in the face of death, what role does silent, physical, shared human presence play in a post-theological age?
Wow.
When Critchley stood in that hospital room before his father passed away and his father reached out and they simply held hands in silence, was that physical, wordless connection, that simple acknowledgement of shared finitude, the true fifth response to nihilism?
Just a hand in the dark.
Not a philosophy, not a poem, but just a hand in the dark.
That is a profound question to carry with you into the everyday, because eventually the machinery hums, the room goes quiet, and all the grand theories and supreme fictions fade away. You are left staring into the raw reality of the moment, and maybe, just maybe, understanding that it is almost nothing is exactly what allows us to see how precious that very little actually is.